Get out, you're broke." Victoria Harrington's voice rang through the Grand Wellington Hotel's opulent lobby as security escorted Charlotte Morgan outside. Guests turned to stare, eyes following the blonde woman in jeans and a bonnet Pravo sweater as she stumbled toward the street. Minutes later, a sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb. Inside was Christopher Morgan, the hotel's new owner, arriving just in time to witness his wife's public humiliation. Earlier that day, Charlotte Morgan stepped out of the taxi and gazed up at the gleaming facade of the Grand Wellington. Massive, crystal chandeliers sparkled behind tall windows, casting a golden glow onto the spotless sidewalk, where uniformed doormen stood like sentinels. She pulled her black cap lower over her eyes, tucked a loose strand of hair behind one ear, adjusted her burgundy sweater, and hoisted her worn canvas bag onto her shoulder. She certainly didn't look like the typical Grand Wellington guest, and that was the point. "Just observe," Christopher had said that morning, kissing her goodbye. "I need honest eyes on this acquisition. The staff doesn't know I'm sending you. They've never met either of us." Christopher Morgan had built his hotel empire from the ground up, transforming struggling properties into polished, profitable landmarks. The Grand Wellington was his latest project, a once prestigious hotel that still sparkled on the surface but had begun to rot underneath. Taking a deep breath, Charlotte walked to the entrance. One doorman gave her a once-over before reluctantly pulling the door open. "Welcome to the Grand Wellington," he said, his tone cool and condescending. Inside, the lobby was a showcase of old-world luxury, gleaming marble floors, gilded mirrors, velvet furnishings. Elegantly dressed guests with Louis Vuitton luggage mingled beneath chandeliers. Charlotte's simple outfit made her stand out immediately. At the front desk, a young man looked up from his screen. His name tag read James Porter. His polite expression faltered when he saw her. "May I help you?" he asked, suspicion edging into his voice. "I'd like to see your rooms, please," Charlotte said with a warm smile. "I'm considering a stay." James glanced at her bag, then back to her. "Do you have a reservation, ma'am?" "Not yet. I wanted to look at the accommodations first. Our standard rooms start at $800 a night. Suites begin at $2,500. Charlotte nodded without hesitation. "That's fine. I'd still like to see what's available." Before James could reply, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Is there a problem here?" Victoria Harrington, the hotel's director of operations, approached with clipped steps. At 50, she was the picture of polished authority. A tailored black suit, a strand of pearls, and not a silver hair out of place. Her smile was cool and practiced as she sized Charlotte up. "No problem," Charlotte said calmly. "I was just asking to see your rooms." Victoria's gaze swept over her attire, her expression hardening. "I see. James, I'll take it from here." Turning back to Charlotte, she added, "Ma'am, the Grand Wellington is a 5-star hotel. Our guests expect a certain standard." "I understand," Charlotte replied evenly. "I'm still interested in seeing the rooms." Victoria's smile thinned. "Perhaps another hotel might better suit your budget. The Comfort Inn down the street offers very reasonable rates." The dismissal hung in the air. Guests nearby glanced over, some with discomfort, others with faint amusement. Charlotte stood her ground. "I'd prefer to stay here, if that's all right." The director's expression dropped its pretense entirely. Leaning in, Victoria said in a lower voice, "Let me be blunt. We cater to a specific clientele. Your appearance suggests you'd be more comfortable elsewhere." Charlotte felt her cheeks flush but kept her voice steady. "I can assure you, the cost isn't an issue." Victoria raised an arched brow. "This isn't about money, it's about atmosphere. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual guests to attend to." As she turned and walked away, Charlotte heard her mutter to James, "Keep an eye on her. She looks like she's casing the place." Despite the hostility, Charlotte wandered the property, taking in every detail. She noted the chipped marble. On a column, a frayed edge of carpet, the inattentive bar staff, and an unattended housekeeping cart in a main corridor. It was all going into her report. The Grand Wellington still had grandeur, but its management had clearly grown complacent. hiding behind luxury while standards slipped. In the restaurant, she was intercepted by a hostess before she even reached the menu stand. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we're fully booked for lunch," the woman said, despite rows of empty tables visible behind her. "I just wanted to look at the menu," Charlotte replied. "Our menus are for dining guests only," the hostess said curtly, already turning away. 30 minutes in, and the message was clear. She wasn't welcome. But soon, they would all know exactly who she was. Charlotte decided to check out the pool area, curious to see if the neglect she'd noticed elsewhere extended that far. As she made her way toward the elevators, she felt the weight of someone's gaze. Across the lobby, Victoria Harrington stood with her lips pressed into a thin line, whispering something to Eleanor Montgomery, the hotel's director of hospitality. Both women glanced in Charlotte's direction. Before she could reach the elevator, Victoria intercepted her, flanked by Eleanor and two uniformed security guards, Marcus Bailey and Nicole Peterson. "Ma'am, I need a word with you," Victoria said sharply, her voice cool and formal. "Several guests have expressed concerns about your presence. Unless you're checking in right now, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Charlotte could feel the shift in the room. Conversations hushed, eyes turned. "I haven't done anything wrong," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "I'm considering booking a room." Victoria gave a short, humorless laugh. "Please, let's not play games." She signaled the security team. "Escort her out." Marcus and Nicole moved into place on either side of Charlotte. She held her ground. "This is completely unnecessary," she said. "I'm a potential guest touring the property." "A real potential guest would have scheduled a visit," Victoria snapped. "They wouldn't be wandering around taking photos, scribbling notes, and, frankly, dressed like that." Charlotte's face flushed. "Are you refusing service based on how I look?" "I'm refusing service because you're disrupting our environment," Victoria replied, raising her voice so others could hear. "The Grand Wellington has standards." Guests had begun to gather now. James, the receptionist, lingered nearby, as did several curious onlookers. Charlotte felt the heat of humiliation rising, but she refused to lower her gaze. Marcus placed a firm, but not forceful, hand on her elbow. "Please come with us, ma'am." "This is absurd," Charlotte protested. "I want to speak to the manager." Victoria's expression hardened into a sharp smile. "I am the manager, and my decision stands." The group began moving toward the entrance. Guests watched in silence as the security guards walked Charlotte across the polished marble floor. Victoria stayed close behind, clearly relishing the spectacle. "This is a hotel for guests who can afford luxury," she said, loud enough to carry. "Not for window shoppers, or whatever it is you're doing. Perhaps next time, dress for the occasion." By the time they reached the front doors, the lobby had fallen nearly silent. Even the bartender had abandoned his station to watch. Victoria stepped in front of Charlotte once more, straightening her pearl necklace with theatrical precision. "We've seen your kind before," she said with a condescending smile, coming in to gawk at how the other half lives. "It's pathetic, really." Charlotte met her eyes. "You may regret this." Victoria's laugh echoed across the lobby. "I highly doubt that." Outside, the doorman stood by passively as Marcus, and Nicole led Charlotte toward the revolving doors. Victoria followed, determined to deliver a final blow. "Let me be perfectly clear," she announced, addressing the gathered crowd like a stage actress taking her final bow. "The Grand Wellington is a premier establishment. Our clientele includes celebrities, executives, and royalty. We do not cater to just anyone who wanders in off the street." Charlotte didn't flinch. "You're making a mistake." Victoria scoffed. "The only mistake was letting you in at all." She turned to the crowd with a dramatic sigh. "This happens from time to time, people thinking they can sample luxury without paying for it." The security guards shifted uncomfortably. Even they seemed to realize things had gone too far. "Ma'am," Marcus started, trying to de-escalate. "Get her out," Victoria snapped. "I have a meeting with our owner this afternoon, and I won't have this place looking like a homeless shelter when he arrives." As Marcus and Nicole resumed their escort, Victoria called out one last time, her voice sharp and cruel. Get out. You're broke. Go find a motel that suits your budget. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Even James looked away, clearly uncomfortable now. But no one stepped in. Charlotte stumbled slightly as the guards guided her through the revolving doors and out onto the sidewalk. She caught her balance just in time to see the glass doors close behind her. Victoria stood inside, smirking in triumph. Charlotte heard her voice one last time as it echoed faintly through the glass. Let that be a lesson. Standards must be maintained. Outside, Charlotte inhaled a deep breath of crisp autumn air. Her cheek still burned from the humiliation, but beneath that heat was a rising calm. Christopher needed to see this. This wasn't just a management issue. It was something deeper, something uglier. She pulled out her phone and began to type. Charlotte pulled out her phone and fired off a quick text. You won't believe what just happened. How close are you? The response came almost instantly. 2 minutes away. What's going on? Before she could reply, a sleek black sedan glided to the curb. The driver stepped out and opened the rear door, revealing Christopher Morgan, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, his presence commanding without being ostentatious. At 45, he exuded the quiet confidence of a self-made man, one who never needed to raise his voice to take control of a room. He spotted Charlotte immediately. His expression shifted from curiosity to concern as he noticed her standing outside instead of waiting in the lobby as planned. Charlie, he said, crossing to her in long, purposeful strides. What happened? I was just thrown out, she said, keeping her voice composed despite the fire still simmering beneath her calm. Apparently, I don't meet their standards. Christopher's face hardened. A muscle ticked in his jaw, the only visible sign of the fury building inside. What do you mean thrown out? The director of operations, Victoria Harrington, had security escort me to the door. Said I didn't belong, called me broke. Told me to go find a motel that suited my budget. Did you tell them who you are? He asked, voice tight. Charlotte shook her head. That wasn't the plan. We agreed I'd observe how they treat regular guests. Christopher nodded slowly, his voice turning deadly calm. Well, I think we've seen enough. Inside the Grand Wellington, Victoria Harrington basked in the afterglow of her performance. With the spectacle over, she clapped her hands once. Back to work, everyone. The show's over. Eleanor Montgomery, the director of hospitality, stepped beside her, her tone uncertain. Don't you think that was a bit harsh? She didn't seem dangerous, just underdressed. Victoria scoffed. That's exactly how standards slip, Eleanor. You let one like her in, and soon you've got tourists lounging in sweatpants. During afternoon tea, she checked her watch. Our new owner arrives soon for the quarterly review. Everything must be perfect. The revolving doors spun. Victoria glanced up, her PR smile already in place, until she saw the man in the tailored navy suit step into the lobby, followed by the very woman she had just ejected. Her smile faltered. Security, she called out sharply. This woman was asked to leave. Marcus and Nicole stepped forward, hesitant, their eyes darting between Victoria and the unexpected guests. That won't be necessary, the man said, his voice quiet but commanding. The entire lobby stilled. Victoria approached, stretching out a hand with professional precision. I apologize for the disturbance, sir. We're handling it. I'm Victoria Harrington, Director of Operations. Are you checking in today? The man ignored her hand. I know exactly who you are, Miss Harrington. The question is, do you know who I am? Victoria blinked, caught off guard. I don't believe we've met. Christopher Morgan. The name dropped like a thunderclap. Victoria's face drained of color. Mr. Morgan, our new owner, we weren't expecting you until 3. I decided to come early, he replied, his gaze unwavering. And this, he gestured to, Charlotte is my wife, Charlotte Morgan. Gasps rippled through the lobby. James at the reception desk looked like he might faint. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. Even Marcus and Nicole took a step back, visibly stunned. Victoria stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing in disbelief. "Your wife?" She finally managed, her voice barely audible. "Yes," Christopher said, his tone icy. "The woman you had escorted out of my hotel. The woman you mocked for being broke. The woman you publicly humiliated for wanting to see how the other half lives." Each sentence landed like a blow. Victoria flinched, visibly unraveling. "Mr. Morgan, I had no idea. If I'd known." "That's exactly the problem, isn't it?" He cut in. "You didn't know. And because you believed she was beneath your notice, you treated her like garbage. Tell me, Miss Harrington, is this the Grand Wellington standard of service? To judge guests by their appearance?" Victoria's professional veneer crumbled. "Sir, please. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." "No," Christopher said, his voice sharp as glass. "You've made yourself perfectly clear. This is the culture you've cultivated here." He turned, addressing the stunned staff who had gathered once more, drawn by the commotion. "My wife spent the morning touring this hotel at my request. She was evaluating the service, the staff, and the guest experience from a regular visitor's perspective, and what she found was discrimination, arrogance, and public humiliation." Victoria trembled, her career visibly collapsing in real time. "Mr. Morgan," she pleaded, "please allow me to apologize." "You've done enough," Christopher said coldly. He turned to Eleanor. "Are you the director of hospitality?" Eleanor gave a shaky nod. "Ironic title," Christopher said, his voice dry. "You stood by and let this happen?" There was no response. Silence gripped the lobby as Christopher Morgan's gaze swept over every staff member in sight. "I believe a company-wide meeting is in order," he said. The Grand Wellington's elegant conference room had never felt so cold. Every department, head and staff member stood at attention, a wall of tense faces under the room's ornate chandelier. Christopher Morgan paced the length of the polished mahogany table. In a quiet corner, Charlotte sat silently observing. "I acquired this hotel," Christopher began, "because I believed in its potential. The Grand Wellington was once a name synonymous with excellence, true hospitality, gracious service, but those days, it seems, are behind us." Victoria Harrington stared fixedly at the table, unable to meet his eyes. Beside her, Eleanor Montgomery dabbed at her eyes, a crumpled tissue clutched tightly in one hand. Across the room, from James, porter at reception, to the security team, shame and apprehension hung heavy in the air. "What happened today wasn't simply a case of mistaken identity," Christopher continued. "It was a glaring example of a systemic failure, a culture where arrogance has replaced empathy. My wife walked into this hotel dressed casually and was treated as a threat rather than a guest." He paused, letting the silence deepen. "Harrington, you didn't just fail to recognize the owner's wife. You failed to recognize basic human dignity, and that is unforgivable in this industry." Victoria's voice trembled as she finally spoke. "Mr. Morgan, I've dedicated 20 years to luxury hospitality. Please, just give me a chance to make this right." Christopher shook his head. "That chance was yours every day, with every guest. But as my wife's experience shows, and as your behavior confirmed, you've chosen appearances over authenticity, status over service." He turned to the room, voice rising just enough to command attention. "How many guests have been dismissed, judged, or humiliated simply because they didn't look the part? How many people have walked away from this place feeling smaller than when they arrived?" Silence. Nobody dared to answer. Christopher nodded to his assistant, who stepped forward and handed sealed folders to each department head. "Inside, you'll find termination notices for Victoria Harrington, Eleanor Montgomery, and both security officers involved in today's incident." A collective gasp. Victoria shot to her feet. "You can't be serious." "Completely," Christopher replied, unflinching. "Additionally, all front desk staff who witnessed the incident and chose inaction will be placed on probation pending further review." James Porter paled. Around him, others shifted uneasily. Christopher continued, unwavering. "The rest of you have a decision to make. The Grand Wellington is undergoing a complete transformation, not just of its facilities, but its culture. If you believe true luxury is how we treat everyone, not just those wearing designer labels, you're welcome to stay. If you don't, you should resign. Today. Victoria's chair screeched against the floor as she stood, livid. This is outrageous. I've managed 5-star properties across 3 continents. You can't end my career over one misunderstanding. Christopher's gaze was icy. This wasn't a misunderstanding, Ms. Harrington. It was a revelation of your character and of the culture you've fostered here. Security will escort you to collect your belongings. Your final paycheck will include 2 months' severance, which frankly is more generosity than you showed my wife. As Victoria stormed out, Eleanor and the 2 guards trailing behind her. Like shadows, Christopher turned back to the staff. Effective immediately, your interim general manager will be Thomas Reynolds from our Chicago property. He arrives tomorrow to begin the transition. In the meantime, I suggest each of you reflect on what true hospitality means. He glanced at Charlotte, who stood and joined him at the front of the room. My wife and I built our company on one guiding principle. Everyone deserves respect, regardless of their appearance or perceived status. That's the standard I expect at every Morgan property, and the Grand Wellington will be no exception. The meeting ended, leaving the shaken staff to process the seismic shift that had just shattered their status quo. As Christopher and Charlotte exited the room, Victoria Harrington was being escorted down the hall by security, her career at the Grand Wellington over in a matter of minutes. 1 month later, the Grand Wellington's lobby radiated a new kind of energy, warm, inviting, inclusive. The icy chill of exclusivity had been replaced with genuine welcome. Charlotte Morgan, dressed in the same simple, comfortable style that had caused so much uproar weeks earlier, sat in a plush armchair near the fireplace. She watched with quiet satisfaction as guests from all walks of life came and went, each greeted with kindness, not calculation. Beside her stood Thomas Reynolds, now officially the hotel's general manager. He glanced at the tablet in his hand and grinned. Guest satisfaction scores are up another 12%. We're outperforming every other Morgan property. Charlotte smiled, watching a young receptionist warmly welcome an elderly couple in well-worn travel clothes. That's what real luxury looks like, she said. And for the first time in a long time, the Grand Wellington was living up to its name. Celebrities and executives no longer defined the Grand Wellington. It's not just the satisfaction scores, Charlotte noted, glancing around the bustling lobby. Look at our occupancy rates. Thomas scrolled through his tablet and raised his brows. 92%, even after the rate increase. Turns out people are willing to pay premium prices for genuine service over superficial snobbery. The lobby's revolving doors spun. Open. Christopher entered, returning from a meeting with the renovation design team. Staff acknowledged him with respectful nods. No panic, no scrambling. A far cry from the tense, fear-driven atmosphere that had once reigned under Victoria's leadership. "How's everything going?" he asked as he joined them. "Better than we imagined," Thomas replied. "Hiring's complete, training programs are running, and guest feedback has been phenomenal." Christopher scanned the lobby, taking in the subtle but significant changes. The worn carpets were replaced with soft, modern patterns. The marble, once chipped and neglected, gleamed again. Fresh flowers graced each corner. But the most profound change wasn't in the decor, it was in the energy. The spirit of the hotel had shifted. "And James?" Christopher asked, referring to the receptionist who had silently witnessed Charlotte's mistreatment. Thomas nodded. "He's come a long way. After probation, he requested a transfer to our community outreach program. He's now coordinating hospitality training for residents at local shelters. Says it's taught him the true meaning of service." Charlotte smiled. "Sometimes people just need a wake-up call." Just then, a young woman approached, slightly nervous but composed. "Excuse me, Mr. and Mrs. Morgan. I'm Amanda, the new director of guest relations. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be part of this transformation." Christopher smiled warmly. "Thank you for embracing our vision, Amanda." As she walked away, Charlotte turned to her husband. "Have you heard anything about Victoria?" Christopher's expression tightened. Last I heard, she's been struggling to find another position. Word's gotten around. I don't wish her harm, Charlotte said, quietly. But I do hope she's learned something. Some lessons, Christopher replied, come at a cost. He hesitated. Speaking of which, I received an email this morning. Victoria's requested a meeting. Charlotte raised an eyebrow. What for? To apologize, supposedly. He met her gaze. I told her I'd consider it, but only if you're comfortable. Charlotte considered it for a long moment. Maybe it could offer closure. If she's truly changed. Their conversation paused as a young family entered the hotel. The parents wore simple clothes, their teenage children wide-eyed at the opulent surroundings. A concierge approached with genuine warmth, offering assistance without hesitation. Christopher nodded toward the scene. That is what we fought for. Not just new leadership, a new definition of hospitality. Charlotte squeezed his hand. Worth every uncomfortable moment. The private dining room. 1 week later, the table was set for 3. Christopher and Charlotte arrived early, finalizing renovation details while awaiting their guest. Though, the upcoming meeting carried emotional weight, they were calm, anchored in the progress they'd made. At exactly noon, Victoria Harrington entered. The month since her dismissal had left its mark. Her hair was less styled, her designer power suits replaced by something more modest. The sharp edges of her confidence had dulled, but not disappeared. She approached the table with composed dignity. Mr. and Mrs. Morgan, she greeted formally. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Christopher gestured to the empty chair. Please have a seat. A silence settled as Victoria gathered her words. I came here to apologize, she began, voice steady but subdued. My behavior was inexcusable. Not just toward you, Mrs. Morgan, but toward many guests over the years. Charlotte studied her carefully. Why now? It's been a month. Victoria hesitated, then exhaled. The truth? I haven't been able to find another position. My reputation... She trailed off. But that's not the only reason I'm here. She continued, her voice quieter. After I lost the job, I had to make changes. Downsized to a small apartment in a neighborhood I'd once have looked down on. My neighbors now, service workers, retired people, teachers, people I never really saw before. She looked directly at Charlotte. Last week I attended a community meeting. No one knew my past. I showed up in jeans and a sweater, just another resident concerned about rising rents. And they welcomed me. They listened. They cared. Her voice broke slightly. It made me realize how much I misjudged others, how much I missed by building barriers around myself. Christopher and Charlotte exchanged a glance. I appreciate your honesty, Christopher said. But I have to ask, what are you seeking from this? Victoria straightened her shoulders, clearly bracing herself. Not a job, if that's what you're thinking. I know that bridge is burned. I'm not asking for a second chance at the Grand Wellington. She paused, then added, I'm asking for a chance to do better. Somewhere. Anywhere. And maybe to say thank you. Because losing everything forced me to finally see what I refused to before. Charlotte leaned back, thoughtful. Change doesn't come from a single apology, she said gently. But recognizing the problem, that's a start. The moment held. Outside, the hotel buzzed with new life. Inside, 3 people shared a quiet, unexpected beginning to closure. I'm not here to ask for my job back, Victoria said quietly. I just wanted to apologize face to face. And perhaps offer some insights about the previous management structure, if they might help you in your reorganization. Charlotte leaned forward, her expression steady. Did you truly learn something from all this, Victoria? Yes, Victoria answered without hesitation. I learned that real class has nothing to do with clothes or money or titles. It's about how you treat people, all people. She gave a small, rueful smile. A lesson I should have learned long before being fired in front of an entire staff. Christopher studied her. The hospitality industry is forgiving of many things, but cruelty isn't one of them. Still, everyone deserves a chance to redefine themselves. He reached into his jacket and slid a business card across the table. Thomas Reynolds is starting a mentorship program for hospitality students from underserved communities. They're looking for experienced professionals to help guide them. If you're serious about rebuilding, this might be a place to start. Victoria picked up the card, her fingers trembling slightly. There was a flicker of emotion in her eyes. Something genuine. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't deserve this kindness." "That's the point," Charlotte replied gently. "True hospitality isn't about what people deserve. It's about treating everyone with dignity, regardless of what they wear or where they come from." She paused, then added, "Have you ever been judged by your appearance? Or maybe misjudged someone else? The way we treat others reveals everything about who we are." Charlotte's voice held quiet conviction. True class isn't about designer clothes or expensive jewelry. It's about how we carry ourselves and how we treat the people around us. If you're reading or presenting this story aloud, consider ending with something like, "If this story resonated with you, tap the like button and subscribe for more stories about justice, redemption, and second chances." Share in the comments where you're tuning in from and tell us, what does true hospitality mean to you? Until next time, remember, appearances can be deceiving, but kindness never goes out of style. Let me know if you'd like this adapted for video script, social media post, or audio narration.